You're listening to the Writestream Radio Network, rejoicing in the flow of creativity. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @Writestream and #Writestream. Thanks for listening to the Writestream Radio Network.
Writestream Tuesday. This is your host, Daria, and I am the co-founder of the Writestream Radio Network and Writestream Publishing, LLC, and of course, host of this weekly program that shines a spotlight on authors, and authors in every genre. I have such a wide range of interests, and as many of you know, I also share an interest in the metaphysical, as does, of course, my co-founder and friend, Lisa Tarvas. And that's what we're going to focus on today in today's show. But before I introduce my fantastic guest and get this interview started, just want to let everyone know a couple of exciting events happening here around Writestream Publishing and Writestream Radio. For the month of October, our publishing company, Writestream Publishing, has a spooktacular offer for anyone interested in hiring a ghostwriter and combining that with a fabulous marketing package. So we've combined our ghostwriting plus our Dazzle package for independent publishing success. And you can visit our website at writestreampublishing.com to learn more about that. But it is a fantastic deal that will mysteriously vanish at midnight on October 31st. So if you know anyone or if you yourself have an interest in hiring a ghostwriter, please visit our website and you'll see a link there where you can contact us and set up your no-obligation, complimentary 30-minute consultation. We would absolutely love to talk to you more about your project and hope that you'll take advantage of this special offer for October. Also, for anyone listening who lives in South Florida, please join me this Saturday at Books and Books in Coral Gables, where we will be celebrating the release of Miami Breast Cancer Experts. And, of course, we released that as Writestream Publishing just about a week ago now. It's a fantastic book. I was the lead editor on the project, very proud to be associated with Cindy Papali-Hammontree and Sabrina Hernandez-Cano. Those are the two co-authors of the book. But there are 31 contributors in all in this outstanding, truly indispensable guide. The full title is Miami Breast Cancer Experts, Your Indispensable Guide to Breast Health. And these two women really gathered professionals in every aspect, from the medical to holistic to psychological, people who are experts in treating sort of the body, mind, and spirit have all contributed to this book, and it's absolutely outstanding. If you do not live in the area and you're unable to come to the event at Books and Books this coming Saturday, October 17th at 5:30, please visit Amazon.com, where that book is now available in Kindle and paperback. We're very proud of that. And also just a quick shout-out to our Writestream author, Cynthia Foster. We released her book, The Seventh Symbol, last month, and it's a fantastic book. It's called The Seventh Symbol, A Modern Allegory, and it's one of those books that's really hard to genreize, if you will. It combines elements of visionary fiction, science fiction, reincarnation, time travel, fascinating stuff. So you can visit and find more out about Cynthia at her website, cynthiafosterBooks.com. And certainly after I interview today's guest, I'll let everyone know all about our radio hosts. But in the meantime, you can visit and find out more about our full lineup of hosts and shows by visiting WritestreamRadio.com. Okay, without further ado, I want to introduce today's guest, author Garnet Schulhauser. Now, Garnet Schulhauser is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with his wife Kathy and little dog Abby. He grew up in Saskatchewan and moved to Calgary, Canada after law school, where he practiced corporate law for over 30 years with 2 blue-chip law firms. After retiring from his law firm in 2008, he began his new career as an author, and his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, was published in 2012. Since the release of his first book, Garnet has been active with book signing tours and speaking engagements, and has been a frequent guest on radio talk shows. In Dancing on a Stamp, Garnet recounts how his life changed dramatically one day in 2007 while still practicing law, when he was confronted on the street by a homeless man named Albert, who was actually a wise spirit in disguise. Albert revealed startling new revelations about our soul journey on Earth and the afterlife that awaits us. His second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit, describes his most recent adventures with Albert, who appeared in his bedroom one night to guide him on a series of out-of-body adventures around our world and other parts of the universe to demonstrate the urgent need for us to discard the dark side of humanity in favor of love and compassion. And before I go ahead and bring my wonderful guest on the air, I want to let everyone know that we welcome your calls today. I'm sure you may have lots of questions for Garnet, and you can ask them of him on the air by calling 347-945-7246. That's 347-945-7246. And be sure to press 1 so that I know you would like to ask a question. Otherwise, I might think you just want to listen to the show via phone, and I won't know that you actually want to ask Garnet a question. All right, well, so I'm very proud to welcome to Writestream Tuesday author Garnet Schulhauser. Hey, Garnet, how are you?
Fine, thanks, Daria. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited about today's interview because I love talking about this stuff.
Oh, and I love talking about it too, Daria, so fire away.
All right. Well, Albert, I just find this fascinating because you spent, most of your career in law in a very sort of, what I'll say, maybe practical, earthly, if you will, type of profession. And, in your first book, Dancing on a Stamp, you describe your first encounter with your spirit guide, Albert. How did you first meet him, and what was that like for you? I'm just really curious.
Well, it was very much of a transformational event, Daria. I was still practicing law, as you mentioned in the intro, this is in 2007, and I was walking down the street one sunny afternoon in May with my head in the clouds as usual, thinking about files and projects and clients and so on. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped out in front of me. And he looked very like a typical homeless man. Like I'd encountered these people many times before on the street. My usual tactic was to do a quick sidestep and go around them. This guy looked like the typical homeless person with long stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. And the reason I didn't go around him was because he had these amazing, dazzling blue eyes. And those blue eyes were, first of all, I felt as his gaze was penetrating deep within me, right down to the depths of my soul. And I felt that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done, my total history, all my hopes and aspirations, my fears and anxieties, and even my deepest and darkest secrets. And I had no idea why I sensed this because we'd never met before. This is a total stranger to me. But I didn't feel violated because at the same time, his eyes were sending me this wave, this gush of unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security. It was a wonderful feeling, Daria. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. And so because of that, I just stopped there, basking in this guy's gaze like a deer caught in the headlights. And I'm not sure how long I stood there. It was like I was in a time warp. And I didn't really care how long I stood there because I was really enjoying the gaze from this man's amazing blue eyes. Eventually, though, he broke my reverie by saying, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. Well, when I finally collected my wits, I decided that I had to find this guy. I had to find out who he was and why he'd stopped me and what was the reason for our encounter. So I went into the store he had disappeared into, walked around. There was only one entrance and exit. He hadn't come out. He was nowhere in the store to be seen. So then I walked back out on the street, and I walked up and down for 15 or 20 minutes trying to spot him, but he had basically disappeared into thin air. He wasn't anywhere to be seen. So I walked back to my office, and I resolved that evening that I really had to pursue this matter further. I had to find this guy, and I had to ask him why he had stopped me and who he was. So the very next day, I went back at the same time, same street, and walked up and down the streets hoping to spot this man. And after 15 or 20 minutes, when I was about to lose hope, I spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. And so I walked up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and to help you on your journey." Well, then unfortunately my lawyer brain, my skeptical lawyer brain, which you can't really get rid of once you're a lawyer, it kicked in. And I said to him, "Well, why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because it looks like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." Well, he just gave me a big smile and he said, "You know, looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a very successful lawyer with everything under control. But we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You can turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find the answers you've been seeking on all those emails waiting for you on your computer. Or you can sit down and have a chat with me." So luckily then my intuition kicked in and it was screaming at me, this guy is a special guy, he's very different, you really have to explore it further with him. And after all, what did I have to lose? Half an hour of my day? So I sat down on the bench with him and we began a dialogue that went off and on for the next several months. And I found out, Daria, early on that he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And that he told me that I was the only one who could see him in physical form as the homeless man. And so if somebody else had been passing on the street that day, they would have seen me sitting on the bench all by myself and talking to myself.
Wow.
And so after the first 3 visits, he no longer appeared as the homeless man. He was just a voice in my head. We communicated by telepathy. And we communicated, I would go into a quiet room all by myself, and there I would, then we just sort of communicate by telepathy, and I would ask him questions, he would answer my questions, I'd take notes, and then I'd transcribe them onto my computer, and eventually that formed the basis, all my notes of our dialogue, the basis for my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. And when I asked him why he had appeared to me initially as the homeless man, he said it was his way of easing me into the conversation, because had he just started out of the blue talking to me as a voice in my head, I likely would have thought I was losing my mind. And so this way, when after the first few visits, then I could relate to his voice. I understood who he was. I recognized him. And when we communicated by telepathy, I knew that I wasn't losing my mind because this is the same guy that I had met in physical form before. So that was his reason for first appearing to me that way. I think it was a very good way of doing it, because I'm sure that if I hadn't actually encountered him in physical form initially, I probably would have thought I was becoming schizophrenic or whatever when all of a sudden there's this voice in my head. So it was his way of easing me into it, very good way of doing it. And I very much enjoyed the dialogue. And he initially he said he came to answer all the big life questions I've been asking myself, ever since I was in my 30s and 40s, questions that we all ask ourselves at one time or another, like, who am I? Why am I here? What is my life's purpose? And what happens to me when I die? And so he answered all those, plus many others. And he told me early on that he wasn't just going to satisfy my curiosity. He wanted me to write a book about his revelations so that everyone else would have access to what he was telling me. And so that took me aback a bit. I had never thought of writing a book before, but he was persistent, and eventually I caved in and I wrote my first book, Dancing on a Stamp.
Wow, what a fascinating story. Now, Garnet, before I get to my next question, I have to ask you something else that just kind of popped into my head. Did you, at this point, I know you mentioned that you had been kind of asking yourself those questions, once you got into your 30s and 40s, who am I, what am I doing here? Up until that point, though, like prior to meeting Albert, did you have a belief system? I mean, did you believe in God? Had you belonged to a religion? I mean, tell me a little bit about your faith background.
Oh, I was raised in a very religious Roman Catholic family, and we followed all the rules and beliefs of the Catholic Church. We went to church frequently. I served as an altar boy for many years, so that was my religious background. And our religion was driven by my mother, who was fiercely religious and who was determined to make sure that her husband and her 5 children all made it to heaven, even if she had to drag us kicking and screaming. She was very determined that we would follow the rules because that was the only route to heaven. So initially as a child, I believed in God. I believed in the version of God taught by the Catholic Church, and I believed that all the way through until probably sometime when I hit my 20s. I was off at university. Then I began to question a lot of their beliefs, Daria, and after a while, I concluded that a lot of them just didn't make any sense. And so by the time I was in my 30s, I had rejected most of what they had taught me. And so then I was in sort of a no man's land. I was casting about for another paradigm, another set of beliefs to latch onto. And so that's why I was constantly asking myself the life eternal questions, hoping to find some answer somewhere that really rang true. And that didn't happen until I met Albert, and everything he told me, his answers really made sense to me and rang true. And I truly believe that what he told me is the absolute truth. So I finally found my answers. It took a while, but they came after I met this homeless man on the street.
Now, Garnet, tell me, what were Albert's main revelations?
Well, in answer to the first question, like, who am I? He said, well, I'm an eternal soul, just like every other human on the planet. He said that we all originated on the spirit side, which some people call heaven or the other side or whatever. It exists beyond the veil, a very high vibrational place. Over there is our true home. We are beings of energy, pure energy. We don't need to eat or drink or breathe or sleep or reproduce or anything. We're sort of beings, entities in the purest form. And so that's really our true home. And so why did I come to Earth? Well, I came here because I, as a soul on the spirit side, chose to come here to learn and experience things that I needed for my evolution, to experience things that don't exist on the spirit side, because on the spirit side, there are no negative emotions, no harsh physical conditions. None of the things that make life on Earth a challenge don't exist on the spirit side. So there we can learn things about what happens on our planet Earth, but it's like book learning, and to really complete our knowledge, we really have to come to Earth, incarnate in the physical form, and experience the things that everyone typically experiences on our planet, and that provides sort of hands-on learning. So that's why we come, and we choose it ourselves. No one makes us come here. No one forces us to come. We decide on our own that we want to come and incarnate as a human on Earth. And before we come, we each prepare a life plan, which is like a broad blueprint of what we hope to encounter and experience in our lives on Earth. So things like the place we're going to be born, our names, the first language we learn, the identity of our parents and siblings and friends and coworkers, that's basically all mapped out. And the people who play major roles in our lives, the other souls, they're all there for our planning session, and they have to agree to be a major part of our lives, and we have to agree to be a major part of their lives. So it's all a very cooperative sort of project, because you can't, as a soul, just foist yourself on somebody else's life without their agreement. So it's a very much of a consensus-building kind of operation. And so one of the biggest challenges, though, of living as a human on Earth is that once we're born, we don't remember that we have a life plan. We don't remember where we came from or what we plan to do. And because we have free will to take actions, make decisions, we're very often going to stray off the course we had planned for ourselves. So our lives are not predetermined. Some of the initial things are fixed before we're born, like where we're born and who our parents are. We can't change that by our free will actions. But everything else after that, we can in fact change that by making decisions. And so, as I say, we very often stray off course, sometimes very badly, but it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, no matter what we do or how many wrong turns we take, we'll always end up back on the spirit side after our physical bodies die. So that's why we're here. That's who we are. The other major revelation, which Albert told me, which really flies in the face of what Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries, is that God, or the source, does not manipulate or control events on our planet. and the source does not make rules for us to follow. And that one really flies in the face of most of the dogma of most major religions. So the God doesn't put us here to test to see whether or not we can follow His rules, because He doesn't make any rules, despite what the religions say. And then that follows that when we die, there is no judgment. God doesn't, you don't appear before God or the source and have to answer to what you've done in your life. And if you've strayed off course and been bad, there is no punishment. There is no hell. So everyone, no matter what you do here, goes back to the spirit side, where you can regroup, have a review of your life, and learn from the mistakes you've made, and then plan your next incarnation. So most of those things just are totally 180 degrees opposite from what I was taught as a child, Daria.
Oh, yes, and I can relate to that, too. I'm having been raised Catholic, and immediately, I thought of the Ten Commandments and things that come to mind. Although I would wonder, though, Garnet, we still have I think most of us have an innate sense of right and wrong. I think everyone can agree that it's wrong to just walk up to somebody on the street and mug them or steal from them or try to hurt them, though. But, you know what I mean? So where would something like that come from? Is it just a knowingness that we all come from God, and that's not how, we should behave while we're here?
Yeah, that comes from messages we get from our soul, because our soul does not, wants to come to earth and do good. So when I say that the source does not make rules, that's true. But our souls kind of make rules and guidelines for our incarnations before we come here, and so you get that. So the innate sense that most of us have that it's not okay to murder or steal or harm other people, that comes from messages from our soul and our spirit guides, and so it's an innate sense of what is morally correct. And so when we do bad things on earth, it doesn't mean that we're not breaking any rules. There are secular rules that our governments make. You breach those and you could be fined or go to jail. And there's also rules and guidelines that our soul hopes for us to follow. And if we don't do that, then we're sort of going off course there. What I mean by the source not making rules is that you don't have to, no matter what you do, good or bad on earth, the source doesn't give us any judgment and has not made any rules for us to follow. We make our own rules, and our governments make rules, and that's just part of life on earth.
Right. Okay. And, it's very interesting, Garnet. This is a side note. I worked with an author a couple of years ago as his ghostwriter, and he felt the same way you did about, that there is no hell. That was one thing he was very adamant about, and he actually, in his case, he believed that hell, if you will, in quotations, is this life experience, where, as you said, we have all these limitations of time and space, and we need to eat, and we need to keep a roof over our head, and we have to work, and those sorts of things. Now, his belief system was that based on the choices you made, and if you were very destructive on your time on earth, when you get back on the other side, you kind of review your life and you think, oh my goodness, as a soul, oh my gosh, no, this was wrong. I'm gonna come back in another lifetime and sort of make up for that, or try to be better, get another chance to do it again, but better that time. Would you say that that's similar to your belief system?
Yeah, absolutely. That's dead on. Because Albert says that when our physical bodies die, we transition back to the spirit side, and one of the first things that happens is that we have what he calls a life review. And there, you get to review all the segments of your most recent life on Earth. And you get to see them like you're watching a 3D movie, or you can actually jump back into your body at the time and sort of relive it in the first person. And the neat thing about a life review is that you actually get to hear the thoughts and feel the emotions of the people you interact with during your life. And so if you've done a bad deed to somebody, you can feel their hurt, and their despair at your actions. Or if you've done something very kind to someone, you can actually feel the gratitude that they are sending your way. So it's very much of a great learning tool. But the purpose of a life review is for you to go review everything you've done, the good and the bad, where you've made mistakes and gone off course. You look at it as a learning tool so that you basically say, yes, okay, well, I messed up there. Next time I really want to do better. And that sort of forms the basis for the planning of your next incarnation, so you can come back to Earth and try to do better, try to make amends for the places, for the times that you've gone off course and caused harm to others. So, yeah, very much what he tells you is very much what Albert told me as well.
Very interesting. Okay, so now let's talk about your second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. In that book, you describe a series of astral adventures you took with Albert, and I'm really curious to hear about those and how they came about.
Well, it was after my first set of dialogues, Q&As with Albert had ended, and he sort of left me for a while so I could finish my manuscript. Then after a few months where I hadn't heard from him, I was beginning to wonder if he had disappeared from my life. I woke up one night in my bedroom, Daria, and I saw this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when it moved closer towards my bed, I could then recognize that it was my old friend Albert in his homeless man disguise, except that he was in astral form. And so I was a bit surprised, and I said, "Hi, Albert, what brings you here?" He said, "I'm here to take you on a series of out-of-body astral adventures. I want to take you to the spirit side to meet with some people. I want to take you to other places in the universe and to certain spots on our planet so that you could write about what you see." Because he said, "I believe a picture is worth 1,000 words. So rather than me just describe what I want you to write about, I want you to see it yourself, and then you can write about it in your next book." So I'd never done this before, so I said, "Well, okay, Albert, do I have to tell my wife where I'm going? And do I need a passport? How do I do this?" and he just laughed and he said, "You'll be back in your physical body before the morning, and your wife will never know you've gone anywhere. And just come with me and I'll show you how it's done." So he literally then reached out and grabbed my hand, my astral hand, and pulled it from my astral body from my physical body. I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still sound asleep in bed. And he said, "Follow me," and he just led me up through the ceiling of my house, up through the clouds, and we stopped at a high point above our beautiful planet, and he let me turn around and look at our planet, which was really a breathtaking scene because from that altitude, our planet is it's amazingly beautiful. It's like a jewel pendant, floating in the inky blackness of space. So really an amazing scene. But he didn't let me linger. He then said, "Come on, I'm taking you to the spirit side." So we went through this. It was sort of like a shimmering doorway floating in space. And on the inside of the doorway was nothing but blackness. And he said, "Follow me." So we went through. Immediately, as soon as I stepped across the threshold, I found myself in this amazing, beautiful meadow. There was like lush green grass and tall, majestic trees, and dozens of clumps of wildflowers, resplendent in like 1,000 different colors, many colors you'd never seen on Earth, or I'd be at a loss to even try to describe in words. Beautiful scene, and he led me on a path through this meadow. We walked up a small hill. At the top of the hill, I looked down on the other side, and I could see a group of people, a group of souls that appeared to be waiting for me. And as we walked down the hill towards them, I got closer, and then my heart skipped a beat because I recognized who was in this crowd. It was my mother, my father, my brother, my grandparents, and various aunts and uncles who'd already passed over from the earth plane. And then, much to my delight, running from behind the group towards me full speed was my little dog, Oscar, who had passed away 10 years before. And his little tail was wagging his whole body, and he came up to me and gave me this wonderful greeting. Anyway, it was sort of like my initial welcoming back to the spirit side by this group of relatives. I had a little misgiving about meeting with my mother, not because I didn't dearly love her, but because she was so religious on Earth and such a staunch Roman Catholic. I was concerned because what I had written in my first book, Dancing on a Stamp, a lot of it was not kind to the Catholic Church. And so I was afraid about what her reaction might be. But she said, she gave me a big hug and said, "Everything's okay, because if I was still living on Earth, I would not be happy with you about what you wrote in your book. But now that I'm on the spirit side, I can see the whole picture, and I agree with everything that you wrote." So, sigh of relief. I knew I was on the good side of my mother, and so that was great. And we hugs all around to this group. And then Albert said, "Come on, we can't linger here anymore. I have other things for you to do." And he led me towards this beautiful white city, gleaming white city with towers and spires and everything that he called Aglaia. And he said, "I'm going to take you to have a meeting with the Council of Wise Ones." So off we went.
Now, what was the message you got? Well, tell us, what is the Council of Wise Ones, and what's the message that they had for you?
Well, the Council of Wise Ones is a body of a committee of very wise and advanced souls, and it's their job to oversee all the incarnations on our planet Earth. And they're there to help people who are planning incarnations, give them some advice, suggestions about whether their life plans are appropriate or too ambitious or too easy. So that's their job. And so I went into Albert said, this beautiful white building with pillars in the front that he called the Hall of Wisdom. And we went into this big chamber, and there the Council of Wise Ones was sitting. There's 11 in this committee. They all had snow white hair and smooth, unblemished skin, and they were wearing gold robes with white sashes, and they were very regal looking, very wise looking. And the chair of that council, her name was Sophia. She, said that we have a message that we want to give to you that you can write about and take back to your fellow humans. And the message simply was, look, your human civilization is at a very crucial point in its development because you have very advanced technology, but your emotional and spiritual intelligence has not kept pace. And so all too often, too many people let their negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, greed get out of control, which causes a lot of strife and conflict, a lot of harm to your fellow humans. And she said, we have to be careful because we have the weapons of mass destruction that, if they were unleashed, could destroy all life on our planet. And they don't want our civilization to crash and burn like some of the other human civilizations on our planet, some of which we're aware of, like Lemuria and Atlantis and many others that we're not even aware of. And they watched while those civilizations rose up to great heights and then end up destroying themselves. And so they're really hopeful that our civilization does not do the same. So the message to humanity is we have to expand our consciousness and increase our spiritual awareness, discard and control our negative emotions, and embrace love and compassion. And if we can learn to do that, enough of us can do that, we'll raise our vibrations, and we'll eventually get past this crucial point that we're in without destroying ourselves. And the ultimate goal, if we can raise our vibrations high enough, is to ascend to our planet in a higher dimension, which a lot of people refer to as the New Earth. So that was the message to me, that we really have to, everyone who's spiritually aware, we all have to do our best to lead by example and to spread the message of love and hope and compassion and forgiveness that they think we should adopt. And it's important for all of us to do that as quickly as we can before disaster strikes. And they said they've been sending a lot of messages, increasingly so over the last 30 or 40 years, through many different channels, like people who write books and blogs, people like you, Daria, who host radio shows, people speak on public gatherings. They use many, many different channels, and the message is always the same. It's to try to get us over this crucial point by embracing love and compassion. So that was their message to me, and I said, yes, I'll write about it in my book. I'd be happy to do my part.
Wonderful. Well, Garnet, what I want to do right now is let's just take a quick break. I'll play a few commercials. I have so many more questions for you. I'm really enjoying our conversation. This is just fascinating. So please stand by, everyone, in Garnet, and we will be back in a few minutes, and we will continue our conversation with Garnet Schulhauser, talking about his book, Dancing Forever with Spirit and Dancing on His Dance. Hold on, everyone.
Hi, I'm Lisa Tarbutt, co-founder of Writestream, metaphysician, and author of the book Just Believe. Are you interested in the metaphysical? Each week, I invite an experienced psychic to offer insight into your life's important questions. Join me for Just Believe on the Writestream Radio Network every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
The Speculative Fiction Cantina is your weekly hypodermic injection of science fiction, fantasy, horror, alternate history, and things weird and wonderful in the world of books and writers. You'll hear from writers who bend the rules and drive the narrative. We ask authors the hard questions. We do the show in our pajamas. Join S. Evan Townsend on this journey over the rainbow and through the looking glass. The Speculative Fiction Cantina on Writestream Radio every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Hi, I'm Lisa Tarbutt.
Hi, I'm Daria Ann. Ladies, we want to invite you to kick your shoes off,
Pour yourself a glass of wine and join us for Love, Liberty, and Lip Gloss every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Writestream Radio Network.
This women's lifestyle show covers everything important to women, from taking care of yourself and looking your best to dealing with cancer and escaping domestic violence.
Indulge in little girl talk with us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Writestream Radio Network.
Monday afternoons at 1 o'clock Eastern on the Writestream Radio Network. Tune in to Military Monday with host John D. Gresham, author, military historian, and journalist. John delves into a unique aspect of U.S. military history, as well as current events and issues affecting our men and women in uniform. Featuring exceptional guests, military experts, and authors, Military Monday with John D. Gresham entertains, informs, and encourages listeners to support those who put it all on the line for freedom. Military Monday with John D. Gresham. Monday afternoons at 1 o'clock Eastern on the Writestream Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Diane. And this is Denise. And we want to invite you to listen to the History Goes Bump podcast. Ghost tours for the theater of the mind.
The History Goes Bump podcast. A show featuring a look at historic locations, people, and events with a twist. This history podcast is haunted. So grab your slippers, hot chocolate, flashlight, and maybe even that baseball bat, and join us.
You can find the show at iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and other various podcast catchers.
Check out the website at historygoesbump.com.
Keep it spooky.
You're listening to the Writestream Radio Network, rejoicing in the flow of creativity. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Writestream and hashtag Writestream. Thanks for listening to the Writestream Radio Network.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Writestream Tuesday, and I'm your host, Daria, and I am here with author Garnet Schulhauser. Hey, Garnet, how are you?
Pretty good, thanks. How are you?
Welcome back. I'm just fascinated by this conversation, and I love hearing about your experiences. I could talk about this kind of stuff all day long. Before the break, Garnet, you were talking about the Council of Wise Ones and the New Earth. Can you tell us a little bit more about the New Earth again? Because I want to kind of start from there, and I've got plenty of other questions I want to ask you before we end the show today.
Sure. Well, the New Earth is basically our planet in a higher dimension, a higher vibrational dimension. And actually, Albert did in one of my astral travels, he actually took me there to visit the New Earth. And so we went through a dimensional doorway, so the New Earth looks like our Earth, same continents and and oceans and so on. I got to visit one of the civilizations there that lived in a very sort of a idyllic world. They were the descendants of a civilization that had originally lived on our old Earth a long time ago in Central America, and they had managed to orchestrate a mass ascension from the old Earth up to the new Earth by raising their vibrations in a sort of a joint effort. And they had done that to escape there was a barbarian army that was encroaching on their territory, and this civilization was very peace-loving, didn't have any weapons, couldn't defend themselves, so the only way they could get away from harm was to orchestrate this mass ascension. So the people I met with there were the descendants of this group that had ascended in a group. And it was a wonderful place. There's no negative emotions. There's no crime. No one has to work. There's no money. Everyone has whatever they want, provided free of charge. These people live in total harmony with each other, with their planet. They don't pollute their planet, and with all the other creatures who live on our planet. So they don't kill plants or animals for food. They live off of plants that are grown freely in the forests and the meadows of their planet. They've learned how to slow down the aging process and ward off disease and repair injured tissue, so that they all live for 200 or 300 years. and they don't have to work, as I said, so they're all free to pursue recreational activities, free to pursue knowledge and wisdom, and enjoy the peaceful splendor of their planet. So it was a very amazing kind of a civilization, free from all the negatives that we find on our planet. So it was really like a place that we should all aspire to get to. And as Albert says, we can get there. It doesn't have to be in a group. We can do it individually. We do so by raising our vibrations high enough so that our vibrations match the vibrations of the new Earth, and then we can actually ascend there. It just happens sort of automatically once our vibrations are raised high enough. And how do we get there? Well, he said, what slows us down are negative emotions, anger, fear, hate, greed, and all the things that result from those negative emotions. And so to raise our vibrations, we have to fully embrace love and compassion and forgiveness. And if we fully embrace love, there is no room for negative emotions. And so that's really the goal, which is easier said than done, Daria, because it's, as we all know, as we live on this planet, there's so many events in our lives that can cause us to become angry, to become upset, to become stressed out, and we really have to work hard at trying to curtail those.
Yeah, now, Garnet, just to clarify, so this new Earth, I mean, they were actual physical human beings like you and I, right?
The new Earth is still in the physical realm. It's still very much physical, just that the vibrations, their vibrations are a lot higher. So we're at a very dense level of the physical, dimensions, Earth, and New Earth is just a higher dimension. So they're very much physical. They still have to eat and drink and reproduce and breathe and so on. It's just that they had, they managed to get rid of all their negative emotions, so they lived in a very idyllic and peaceful sort of society. But it's not, the New Earth is not the spirit side. And when those people who live on the New Earth, when their physical bodies die, their souls pass up to the spirit side, just like ours do.
Okay, very, very, very interesting. Now, who did you meet? I know you visited the water planet Proteus. Who did you meet while you were there?
Well, I met with a humpback whale and a dolphin. And just to back up a second, the water planet Proteus, Albert took me there, and it looked a lot like Earth, except that it was entirely covered with oceans. And so we dropped down through the oceans, and underneath it looked like the coral and the plants and all the fish and everything else looked much like what we have under Earth, our oceans here. So he eventually took me over to this large coral reef, and there was a humpback whale and a dolphin. We communicated by telepathy, and they said that to me that the undersea world of their planet looks much like the undersea world of Earth, because a lot of the sea life we have on Earth was originally seeded from Proteus. So that's why it all looks so familiar. And so our dolphins and whales here on Earth, they originally came from Proteus. And so this dolphin and humpback whale told me that they are able to stay in contact with their cousins on Earth by telepathy. So they actually communicate over many light years of distance. And they told me that they don't like what their cousins on Earth are telling them, because the whales and dolphins on Earth are very distraught over their treatment over the centuries by humans, where they've been hunted and trapped and killed or displayed in water parks or whatever. And they don't understand this, because they want to live in peace and harmony with humans and all the other creatures on our planet, and they don't understand why they have been abused by humans. Now, some of this abuse has been curtailed in the last while in terms of hunting, but there's still a lot of it that goes on, and they really implored me to go back to Earth to tell my fellow humans that dolphins and whales are very intelligent, highly emotional, sensitive creatures, and that we really should do our best to treat them as such, even though we think they're more primitive than humans. In many ways, they're actually more intelligent than humans, and they communicate with each other by telepathy and with their cousins way back in Proteus. So that was the message, that one of the message they gave to me was, please stop the human abuse of our cousins on Earth.
Wow. Now, I have to ask you, Garnet, did you encounter any extraterrestrial beings on your astral travels during these travels with Albert?
Yes. In two different occasions. One time he took me to planet Xeron, where I met with some very intelligent beings that reminded me of spiders. They're very intelligent, and they lived in underground cities, and their job was to monitor all the planets in our galaxy, and there's millions and millions of planets, to find out when they were able to harbor life. And when they found ones that were, they would report that to the Galactic Council, and then the Galactic Council would arrange for other ETs with faster-than-light spacecraft to seed life from places like Proteus and other planets to the planets that were ready to harbor life. And so that was sort of their role. And then I actually entered an ET spacecraft that was orbiting Earth. This is by different aliens. And I went inside there, and I met with some gray humanoid beings. And their job was to, first of all, they aided in the seeding of life on Earth a long time ago. And since then, they've been monitoring all the activities of life on Earth, including human development. And so they were very benevolent creatures. They have been around for a long time. They have not yet decided to have open and direct contact with humans because they don't think we're ready for it yet, because it might cause a lot of panic and dismay and chaos. And so they will sort of openly announce their presence when we're ready for it. In the meantime, they're very discreet. Occasionally people can see them, the UFOs that people report seeing. That's sort of from... they're very real. Some of them are from this group that I met with. There's many other civilizations, advanced civilizations, that are also monitoring Earth. They're all very benevolent. They're around here to try to help us, but they're restricted from directly interfering on with what happens on Earth. So they have very advanced technology. They could totally destroy all of our weapons and stop all of our violence. They have the capability to do so, but they are not allowed to do so. They have to stand by and watch life, follow its own path on Earth, and that means they've had to stand by and watch humans, kill each other in wars and other conflicts over the years. And they're very concerned now, like the Council of Wise Ones, that we don't end up destroying ourselves before we can take the next step up the spiritual ladder. So, very interesting. Yes, UFOs are real, and there's lots of ET races that have been visiting us, still are, and someday they will openly announce their presence, as I say.
Wow, this is really cool. And, I think it sounds like they were affirming free will. We hear people talk a lot about our God-given free will, and it sounds like that they affirmed that with you, which is why they don't interfere. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's the sort of, they called it the prime directive, which is they can seed life on planets, and they did on Earth, but they're not allowed to directly interfere or change the course or to change sort of how things develop. And so when they seed life, they're not sure where it's going to go. They didn't know where humans were going to go when they seeded humans on this planet. They're a bit dismayed with some of the things that we've done, but they're not allowed to interfere. And so that's why we've developed the way we have. But they do try to help us because they try to send us inspirational messages. They try to provide us some technical know-how from time to time to sort of help us take the next step up on the technological ladder. So they can give us some subtle help, but they can't sort of just try to drastically alter the course of our evolution.
Right now, and I'm curious too, Garnet, because as you keep talking, all these other questions keep popping up into my head. But is the same true for a spirit guide such as Albert? And actually, while we're at it, why don't we go ahead and define spirit guide for our listeners too? Because there may be people listening who aren't quite sure what that means.
Well, spirit guide is a soul that's currently on the spirit side who agrees to be basically like a coach for the souls incarnated on Earth. And so we all have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 spirit guides, and they're there as our coaches. And they actually will change as our life progresses on Earth, because sometimes as we develop, obviously our needs change, and so spirit guides will sort of come and go. But we'll always have a group of them, and they're there to try to help us, guide us on our journeys. And what they do is they try to give us subtle messages to steer us closer to the course that we have planned for ourselves. Sort of we get off course, they try to steer us back on course. If we come to a fork in the road, they will try to send us messages to give us some guidance as to which fork we should take. And that happens all the time. But for most people, the messages are very subtle. They're like flashes of intuition, whispers in our minds, gut feelings, coincidental events. And all too often humans just miss the messages because our minds are so cluttered with so many other thoughts. And so, my encounter with Albert was very much of a one-off, unusual case where he spoke to me directly by telepathy. I didn't have to sort of try to discern his subtle messages, and he did so very deliberately so that I could very clearly understand what he was telling me, what he was showing me, so I could write books about it. But for as I say, for most people, it's very subtle, and we all too often miss the messages. And the best way to hear this guidance is to quiet our minds, sit quietly in meditation, and get rid of the clutter in our minds, and then we can start to hear the messages from our guides. So they're there watching over us 24/7. They never leave us, and they're always trying to help us in the sense of, help us find the course, the journey that we had prepared and planned for ourselves before we were born.
Mm-hmm. Now, what did Albert tell you about the power of thought and the origin of miracles?
Well, he said that thoughts are very powerful. Thoughts are really beams of energy that fan out to affect other matter and energy in the universe. And so if you're walking down the street and you think you're having a conversation with yourself, you're really having a conversation with the universe, because your thoughts, whether you know it or not, are fanning out and affecting other energy and other matter and affecting your reality. And so, and he says focused thoughts are much more powerful than sort of scattered thoughts, just like a laser beam is much more powerful than the beam from a flashlight. And so if we really want to sort of have our thoughts manifested, we have to learn to focus our thoughts, concentrate, repeat them over and over again, and then we'll get closer to having the manifestation of our thoughts. And so then I said to him, well, that sounds a lot like what the people who advocate the law of attraction say, is that we need to, think positively and visualize what we want, and it will happen. And he said, well, yes, that does work, but you should know that the law of attraction does not always work, because sometimes what our human minds desire and the thoughts that we send out are in conflict with what our soul wants. And if that's the case, our soul will be working behind the scenes to cancel out our thoughts. So that's why quite often, as we all know, our desires are not fulfilled. So, thoughts play a very big role in our lives, and we have to be careful about what we think. But we should always, which basically means we should always think positive thoughts, never negative thoughts, because you often get what you attract what you're thinking, and so that's why we should always think in a very positive fashion. And in terms of miracles, he says that the miracles that have been attributed in our history, many of them in the Bible, like Jesus and Moses, he said those were caused by those people, like Jesus was a master, a very advanced soul who incarnated here to help humans, and he performed his miracles because he was able to tap into the energy of the universe through very powerful, focused thoughts and turn water into wine and walk on water. And Albert says, that is possible for everyone if we learn to use more than 10% of our brains. Someday maybe we can do some of those things as well. But thoughts are very powerful, and miracles are a result of very powerful, focused thoughts.
Yes, and it's funny, Garnet. This sounds very similar to Unity Church, which is based on the teachings of Jesus, but looks upon him much in the same way that you just described, and kind of got involved with them years ago and felt much more of a connection. It made much more sense to me. So it's very interesting that you bring that up. Just as an example, the minister there one time was talking about the concept of gratitude, and how with the miracle of the loaves and fishes, what's the first thing Jesus did? Well, he gave thanks for what he already had. In other words, gratitude in there is one of the multipliers of your good. And I'm sure there was, obviously being a master, there was a lot more to it. But it's very interesting. It made me think of Nancy Norman when you were answering that question. She's a wonderful Unity minister. But let me ask you this. We talked a little bit about reincarnation earlier. And is there ever a point at which God says, "Okay, enough, you're done," or you can, or are we allowed to reincarnate on Earth as often as we choose as souls?
Albert says it's entirely up to each soul, and that God or the Source does not indicate that we're done, or indicate that we should start, or indicate we have many more to go. God doesn't get involved in that. It's our own choice, and it's all for our own evolution. And we choose the path of our evolution. We choose the timetable. We can do it, quicker or slower depending on our own desires, and no two souls have exactly the same path or timetable for their evolution. So it's entirely up to us. We'll keep on coming back to Earth, incarnating as a human, until we feel ourselves that we've learned all the lessons we need to learn, and we've basically graduated from the planet Earth. So it's entirely up to us. But if we want to incarnate 200 times, or we want to incarnate 20,000 times, we can do either of them. It's our choice solely.
Interesting. Okay. Now, we were talking about spirit guides a minute ago, and you were talking about taking that time to sort of quiet our minds and meditate. But how can humans become better at hearing the messages they get from their spirit guides? I mean, are there specific things that we can all do every day to sort of help us clear away the clutter and really hear those messages much more clearly?
Well, I think the first step is to become aware that we are getting these messages. And so then if you become aware of that, then when there's an intuitive thought that pops in your mind, instead of just dismissing it as sort of a random thought that popped in your mind, if you realize that it's coming from your spirit guides, then you'll be more inclined to stop and think about it and say, okay, now, what is that thought telling me? I know where it's coming from. How should I react to it? And the same thing with coincidental events. There are no coincidences, as you know. And so when something like that happens, you really have to sort of pause for a moment and say, okay, here is a coincidence. It was designed to tell me something. I have to try to strive to understand what it is that this message is trying to teach me, and then act on it. So first thing is awareness that you are getting messages, and then the second thing is in terms of literally just spending time each day, even if it's only 10 or 15 minutes, a couple times a day. Sit in a quiet room, try to quiet your mind, and try to focus on listening to your messages. And it's not easy, hard to do, but over time you will gradually start to hear more of your messages and understand what they're trying to tell you. So it's a long, sort of drawn-out process. It doesn't happen overnight, but we really have to work at it. And eventually, we'll be getting more of the messages and understanding them, and that will make our journey on Earth so much more fulfilling, and we'll be much happier, in our human lives because we're getting closer to following what we had planned for ourselves before we were born.
Oh, absolutely. And Garnet, will our spirit guides, if we want to ask them their names to help in some way, make this a more personal, if you will, experience, are they willing to do that?
Sometimes they are, and sometimes yes, sometimes no. Okay. Albert, he told me his name, obviously. If you're sitting there and meditating, and all of a sudden a name pops into your head, it's likely one of your spirit guides identifying themselves. But that's it's not consistent. Sometimes they feel there's no need for identification in terms of a name, and other times they will. But it's regardless of whether you know their name, you really should know that you have a very personal connection with them. They were chosen by you before you incarnated. They're probably part of your soul group, and so they're very close to you, and they're very much concerned with your journey and trying to make it as fulfilling as they can. So, name or not, they're very close to you, and when you get back to the spirit side, you will recognize who they were, and you'll remember why you chose them as your spirit guides.
Now, Garnet, let me ask you, why do the bad guys go to heaven just like the good guys? This is a question that I'm sure a lot of people listening are thinking.
Well, in simple terms, Albert says the bad guys go to heaven because there's no other place to go. There is no hell. Right. There's no place to send people who are bad for punishment. And furthermore, there's no need for punishment because he says that souls in the spirit side, this is hard for a lot of people to swallow, Daria, because we all have a sense that if somebody causes somebody else harm, they should be punished, that justice calls for them to suffer some sort of punishment, whether it be here on Earth or in the afterlife. And Albert says the souls in the spirit side look at it as life on Earth is much like a play. So if you're acting in a play on Earth area and the script calls for you to stab and murder another actor, when the curtain goes down and you leave the theater, you don't get arrested by the police for murder because it didn't really happen. It was just play acting. Well, souls in the spirit side regard events on Earth very much similar to people acting in a play, and we're all following our scripts, different scripts, and we're sometimes running into each other and causing harm. But when the souls get back to the spirit side, if you were murdered on Earth, when you go back to the spirit side, you don't feel any hatred or animosity for the soul of the perpetrator. You love each other unconditionally, and you recognize that you are both sort of on Earth, playing through your scenarios, and that nothing that happens on Earth really lasts except your memories. And so if something bad happened to you, you don't feel anything bad against the person who did it, and everyone just sort of loves each other. It's hard for humans to understand that, but Albert says that's how it is, and when you get back to the spirit side, you understand why what we call the bad guys go to heaven.
Very interesting. And yeah, and I mean, there's a distinction where, on Earth we have a justice system where you wouldn't just let a serial killer just keep going if he's caught and tried and evidence shows that they're guilty. But I think that's what most people, it is a difficult thing for most people to reconcile those two things because it's so different from the way we think here in the physical world. And I have to say, just getting back to the gentleman that I worked with on his book, I mean, he's so much, you two have so much in common. And that was probably the biggest pushback that he got on his book, was this whole concept that there is no hell, everybody goes back to heaven. Yes, that soul that did bad things after their life review will probably choose in their next lifetime maybe to come back as a homeless person to make up for it. I'm just putting out scenarios here. But it's still their choice to do that. And when they get to the other side, they recognize, oh my gosh, I really screwed up. I don't like what I did, kind of thing. But I think that was the biggest part of his book, the biggest concept, the biggest obstacle, I guess, for a lot of the readers of his book to sort of comprehend and accept. So that's very interesting. Now, what was the most exhilarating experience you had with Albert? Because it sure sounds like you had many of them, but is there one that you would choose that was the most exhilarating?
Yeah, there was in my first set of astral trips. And I should tell you that after my first set of astral adventures with Albert, which are described in my book, Dancing Forever with Spirit, I then had another set, which I've described in my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, which will be released in early 2016. So there's another book coming out. But anyway, for my first set of astral adventures, I had asked Albert, he described to me the source. He said the source is, created everyone, sum total of everything in the universe. And I said, Albert, can I go to meet the source? And he said, well, the source doesn't exist in just one locality. The source is everywhere. The source is everything in the universe. But he said, I will take you to visit one of the focal points of the source. And so we went off and we went towards the center of our galaxy, and he took me to what he called one of the central suns of the source, which is in our galaxy. And it was a star that looked like our sun, and we sort of dropped down into the core. And it wasn't, I was in astral form, didn't feel any heat or wasn't blinded by the light, but I felt like I was immersed in a pool of absolutely pure, wonderful, unconditional love. It was like I felt like I was the center of love in all the universe. And it was an amazing feeling, very exhilarating, very comforting, very peaceful, and it was unlike anything I'd experienced before. The best analogy I can think of, Daria, is that if you can imagine the most intense emotional high you've ever experienced in your life on Earth, like the day you got married or the birth of a child, and multiply that by a few thousand times, that would come close to the feeling I had immersed in the central sun. So that was absolutely exhilarating. It was the kind of place where you could just sort of, say, I'm here forever. But Albert soon pulled me out and said, no, you got to come back to Earth because you have to continue with writing your books and your business. So, but that was very exhilarating. It was just a wonderful feeling, and you really don't know what love is until you can be immersed in the absolute, intense, emotional, unconditional love of the source. So that was a wonderful experience.
Wow, pretty incredible. Now, you did mention you still have contact with Albert earlier. Is that still, is most of your contact now through telepathy, as you talked about before?
The most recent set after Dancing on Stamp has been with astral travel. So rather than there is some telepathic contact, but mostly it's Albert coming and taking me to show me things and interview people on the spirit side and so on. So yes, I'm still in contact with him. I finished the manuscript a while back for my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and as I mentioned, it will be released in early 2016. I'm currently in the process, right now as we speak, of having further astral contact with Albert. I never know when he's coming. He doesn't tell me, when he's coming in advance, so he'll just suddenly show up in my bedroom and away we go. And so I'm having a further set of adventures with him, which will be described in my fourth book, which I'm maybe a third of the way through right now.
This is fantastic. And Garnet, I can't let you go before I give you an opportunity to let everyone know where to find you. And I know you have a huge following on Facebook. So give us Facebook, Twitter, your website, where people can purchase your books.
Sure. Okay. Well, on Facebook, my Facebook page is Dancing on a Stamp. So if you go to Facebook and search Dancing on a Stamp, you get to my Facebook page. The other way of getting there is from my website by clicking on the Facebook icon on the upper left-hand side. I'm also on Twitter and YouTube and Google Plus and LinkedIn, and all those icons are there. That you just have to click on them. My website is garnetschulhauser.com, and that's hard to remember. So if you Google Dancing on a Stamp, the first listing will be my website, so you can just click on it, and there you are. On my website, you can download a free excerpt from each book. You can watch a book video. You can watch and listen to the recordings of all of my radio shows. And so far, this is number 68, Daria, that I've been on. So they're all there. And there are buy links as well, so that if you want to buy my book, you can click on all the popular online stores like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Ozark Mountain, my publisher. So a lot of information there. Please invite your listeners to dial into my website. My email address is there as well. And if anybody wants to send me a comment or a question about this show or anything else, feel free to send me an email.
Fantastic. Well, Garnet, I have so enjoyed this interview. I know we ran a little bit over, so I thank you for bearing with me. And honestly, I could ask you a million more questions, which means I'll just have to bring you back when your next book comes out, and we'll continue this conversation.
I'd love to be back in your show, Daria, when my next book comes out, and I'll contact you as soon as I have a firmer handle on the timetable. But, this show has been delightful. You're a wonderful host. Thank you so much. And, best of success to you always, and I look forward to your next book, and congratulations, really, on all of your success, Garnet. Fabulous. Thanks very much, Daria. Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me on your show. You're welcome. Right, you have a wonderful day. You too. Okay, bye-bye. Bye. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. Please visit Garnet Schulhauser at his website. Google Dancing on a Stamp, and you will find him. I know that the show was probably very thought-provoking for many of you, and you may not agree with everything, but boy, I have to agree, it was definitely interesting and a lot of food for thought today. All right, everyone, well, we did run over, and I do have a business to run, too. I love this radio network. It supports our authors, obviously gives us an opportunity to practice our communication skills, interview fabulous authors, talk about great books and writing and spiritual things and all kinds of topics. But unfortunately, I do have to get back to work. So I'm going to end the show here today, but I want to encourage everyone again to take advantage of our spectacular October offer at Writestream Publishing. Find out more about that at writestreampublishing.com, where we have a new post up by our newest contributor, Kristen Fetterman, 6 Ways to Overcome Writer's Block. So check that out. Also visit us at writestreamradio.com, where there's a full listing of all of our shows and our hosts. And I believe, hopefully tomorrow, there will be a live episode of Ancient Myths and Modern Mysteries with Vaughn Goodwin. If so, that will air at 9 p.m. Eastern. And Thursday, my partner in crime here, Lisa Tarvis, is going to be away on vacation, so most likely this week's Love, Liberty, and Lip Gloss will be a replay, but that will air at 7 p.m. Friday, S. Evan Townsend will be back behind the computer with your weekly hypodermic injection of things weird and wonderful in the world of books and writers with the Speculative Fiction Cantina, 6 p.m. Eastern on Friday. And then on Saturday, this week's Get Fit, Feel Fabulous with Britt will be a replay at 10 a.m. because I am going to be in Coral Gables for the Miami Breast Cancer Experts, Your Indispensable Guide to Breast Health, book signing with Cindy Papali-Hammontree and Sabrina Hernandez-Cano and several of my wonderful friends in South Florida and lots of wonderful people who will be there. So if you live in the area, the event starts at 5:30 p.m. There's no charge. There's going to be music. You don't have to buy a book, although if you go and you know a woman who could benefit from the knowledge in this book, I highly encourage you to purchase one, but it'll just be a lot of fun. Come on out and meet some great people who are making a difference in the lives of others. All right, so with that said, I am going to sign off today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Thank you for listening. Visit us at blogtalkradio.com/Writestream for all of our archives. And I will see you back here next week for another episode of Writestream Tuesday.